Hello, I'm Anne Boleyn, and in this episode I'm going to talk about how I fell from favour with King Henry. Now, during my pregnancy in 1533, I was convinced the child would be a boy. It had to be a boy. I was going to save the Tudor line and do something that Catherine couldn't. It had been foreseen by all the physicians and soothsayers that a prince would be born. And in August, we moved the court to Greenwich Palace, where I would take to my chamber, as was custom, to await the birth. Henry was busy planning the splendid joust that would celebrate the birth of his son and heir, and I was locked into my sumptuous chambers with just women attendants, anxious for the birth to begin. My pains began, and after an easy labour, the baby was born at around 3 in the afternoon of the 7th of September. It was a girl, a princess for England, another princess. Henry was very good about it. After all, we were still young and in love, and of course sons would follow. The proclamations were hastily changed from prince to princess, and celebrations began. Of course, my critics were overjoyed and predicted my downfall, but my Elizabeth was given a royal christening in a lavish household, befitting the only legitimate child of Henry. Sadly, this was my only child. I miscarried twice and never produced the prince that would have been my saviour. Like Catherine before me, I was blamed when the male children did not appear, and Henry soon tired of our explosive disagreements, which before he had revelled in, especially the making up. He began to see the fault in me, even flaunting new women before me. I wouldn't stand for it. The arguments raged. Even the country was against me. The people blamed me for the break with Rome and the closing of their monasteries. They wanted their religion and their Queen Catherine back. They couldn't see that England was a better place for it and all the charitable work I did for them. But in the summer of 1535, Henry and I made a progress to the West Country, almost a second honeymoon, to show me off to the country. We stayed in all the best castles and manor houses in the area. We spent July at Sudeley Castle, August in Berkeley Castle, but in September we arrived at Wolf Hall in Wiltshire, home of the Seymour family. Little did I realise then how significant this would be. In January 1536, Catherine died. Henry rejoiced. The threat of war with Spain was lifted, and he made merry, insisting we dress in yellow and hold a banquet. But I was uneasy. With no Catherine in the sidelines, I could easily be thrown off and another set in my place. I even lost the baby I was carrying. Henry's eyes had begun to wander and now settled on one of my ladies, Jane Seymour. He took no trouble hiding the fact, always rushing off to hunt near her house and favour her family. It was humiliating. Privately we argued, but in public we were united. I was Queen of the May at the joust that year at Greenwich, but I noticed Henry was distracted. He left early, taking his men with him, and I never saw him again. Unbeknownst to me, a musician in my service, Mark Smeaton, had been arrested and tortured, and confessed to adultery with me. And all the young men of the court I had played the game of courtly love with were questioned. Even my own brother. My uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, and Thomas Cromwell led the council into my chambers that evening, and they arrested me on the charge of treason. I denied it, but no one listened. I was sent to the Tower of London and lodged in the Queen's apartments to await my trial. They placed unfavourable ladies around me, including my aunt, Lady Elizabeth Boleyn, who had no love for me, to report my every word and find evidence against me. Alone and frightened, I raged and wept. I don't know what I said. I collected myself enough to defend myself at my trial in the hall in front of all the peers of the realm, including Harry Percy, my first love. But it was no use. Henry wanted me dead. He granted me one last favour. The sentence of burning was commuted to beheading, and he'd had brought over from Calais Jean Rambaud, an executioner who was famed with the sword, and he could remove heads in one stroke. My beloved brother George, Weston, Brereton, Norris, and the musician Smeaton were executed on the 17th of May. On the same day, my marriage was declared null and void, and Elizabeth was declared a bastard. Join me next time for my execution.